So before I even begin to throw in my 2 cents into this one, because you know what, I've been getting a lot of crap for what we've been doing last week. For those who've just joined us and don't know what we've been up to, Dennis and I are doing this 4 times a week, nightly show where we talk about some really, really controversial and crazy stuff, which is not crazy at all, and it should not be controversial. That is our point. That you know what, we need to start taking these subjects head on before we screw this world up and screw ourselves up more. So we are talking about shit that you're only thinking about. That's what we do, man. We talk about shit you can only think about, and you don't have the guts to face it. We are willing to put our necks and faces on line and take them on. So you know what? Bad sex, is that good enough reason to end your relationship? Before I go into that, I'm going to go to Dennis, because you know what? He's a professional relationship coach, a therapist, NLP master practitioner. So Dennis, in your experience, how many times, I'm going to twist this question for you. How many times have you said, you know what, bad relationship, bad sex, it's all right, give it a try, stay into the relationship, and it's actually worked out and not screwed up even more?
Yeah, I think, yes. So to your question, yes, I have had that. And what I want to differentiate with from a professional perspective is that a lot of times what we're talking about is the difference, and I think it's important to really differentiate, is the sexual incompatibility coming from differences in libido levels, or is it preference levels? So preference as far as like sexual activities and things to engage in or to try or whatever. So I think we have to really kind of look at that if we're talking about this from a perspective of creating problems or challenges within a relationship, and it certainly can. What I typically do when working with a couple where sex is an issue is I do say that at some point what we want to do is we want to take sex and we want to make it neutral. So by taking and making it neutral, now what we've done is we eliminate the emotions. So if you think about it, there's that book it was written a long time ago, Men Are From Mars, Ladies Are From Venus, or I don't know, something like that. But it really kind of describes the gender differences. And really, it's not the gender roles, it's more about the way that we think and feel about certain things. So, I mean, it's kind of like this, where I've had a woman say, well, to me, sex is about connecting. And the guy is like, well, to me, it's about getting off. So my point is like, let's take those two emotional attachments out of the sex process, and let's just look at it as sex. I mean, do you enjoy it? Yeah, we enjoy it. Do you have fun? Then go have fun. Start there and take the emotional part out of this, and then that will come in. And I just want to come out and say at the very beginning of this, and kind of as a theme, sex is always better with somebody that you're connected with, that you feel connected with, that you love, and you truly want to have sex with, and they want to have sex with you. That's always going to make the recipe for the best type of sexual encounter.
Okay, that I agree with you, but I'm going to add topping to this. Connection, yes, but and you said difference in libido, difference in sexual desires and fantasy. Anyone who's joining us today, we talk about kinks and fetishes and fantasies last night. So we might want to watch that. So now here's the point, Dennis. I'm not endorsing it. I'm not saying you should go to paid sex workers, but my philosophy is, even if you're paying for sex, you should connect, and for that connection, you need to have communication. Only by communication you will find out what the other person likes, and then you have to find what's the overlap. I mean, person A could have completely, fantasies going to this tangent. This person has fantasies going to that tangent, but there's always some overlap. And find that overlap, and that's where you connect, and that's where good or bad sex comes out from. Now, Farhan has commented here. I'm going to take this right now because it's important. He says, so subjective to call any sex bad. You have to define good sex first. Good point. I agree with you, Farhan. But we're not talking about the quality of sex today. We're just saying, if there's a sexual discontentment between two people, is that reason enough for your relationship to screw up? My vote is absolutely 150%. If your relationship, and what's interesting, you will never hear sexless relationship. You will hear sexless marriages, because in a relationship, if you have bad sex, you bail out.
Sure. That's a good
Only in
point.
marriages you don't bail out because of various other reasons. My vote is, if you have a sexless relationship, committed, non-committed, you gotta bail out because of reasons I'll go into in the next 20 minutes. But that's my vote. Dennis, what's your vote?
Yeah, I don't know that I have a vote. I think that there's so many different variables and factors. I'm going to just
Yeah.
come out and say I think that it's totally fine if two people decide to enter into a relationship, marriage, whatever, and they're both asexual. Perfect. Outstanding. What people do or don't do in the privacy of their own home, I'm all for it. It's when it creates problems. And the challenges that I have been exposed to has been like, well, I want sex now. I want sex, but well, I don't want sex. Okay, well, what does sex mean? Well, to the woman, I'm using sweeping generalizations here. So please, anybody watching, don't. I'm just asking that we not take and attach too much to these generalizations. But typically women say, "Oh, I use sex because it's intimate. I want to be able to connect with my partner." And a lot of times, men will just say, "It's like 7 minutes to heaven, and that's it. I want it done, and that's it. I just want to get off." What I'm trying to get at is that when two people commit, when it's like, hey, instead of like sometimes it's just about me, other times it's just about her. But when we both take and engage in something, a mutual act, when we both engage in that, if we go about it with, hey, how can I please the other partner? I will guarantee you, if you work on pleasing your partner and they're not just a selfish asshole, if you do that, they're going to be much more accommodating to taking and serving you and pleasing you as well. So I'm just going to say, there's an old theory, there's an old saying, I don't know how common this is anywhere else in the world, but I know here in the U.S., one of the things that gets said is that, hey, in order for a happy marriage, from the woman's perspective, is that, keep his belly full and his balls empty. Perhaps. But what if he doesn't want a full belly? Right? I mean, so you have to take and look at somewhat what the other partner is wanting as well. I think that we put too much emphasis on, is it good sex or bad sex, as opposed to what is it that we're trying to accomplish?
Oh, see, no, I'm going to rewind a little. The reason
Yeah.
I said sex is crucial in that relationship is because if your sex is fundamental to human existence, we can't deny that. You said something very interesting. If both partners are asexual, so that is sexual compatibility.
That is,
If
though.
both
Yeah.
are asexual, that's perfect. That's absolutely in sync. Perfect sexual compatibility. Nothing wrong with that. Lady Mountbatten, I'm not sure if you know about her, Lord Mountbatten, the last Viceroy of India. They had some very illustrious had a relationship. They made a mini series out about it now, just 6 months ago, in June, I think 3-4 months ago. And they, Lord Mountbatten liked little boys, and Lady Mountbatten is known to have done a whole ship of sailors in one go in a train. So they had, but they mutually consented to have that lifestyle. That is in being in sync. So it doesn't matter what your sync is. It could be
Right.
zero sex. It could be extreme sex. It could be BDSM sex. It could be water sports. It can be any.
Yeah.
It could be scat eating. Whatever it is, man. But as long as two people are in sync in a relationship, it's fine. But if you're not, that's where the problem begins. Because if you're dissatisfied for whatever reason, sexually in your relationship, I believe it is a hormonal problem. It is a physical deficiency. It's like not being able to feed. And you will, sooner or later, very high probability, go and do something with somebody else that's going to destroy your relationship even further. So if you have a relationship where there's sexual discontentment, I say bail out. Of course, there's more to it. You must try everything. You must communicate. You must see a therapist. You must. When all the musts are done and still it's not working out, get out of there before you create a much bigger disaster of infidelity, cheating, broken hearts, fights. Don't go there. Get out of there before that starts.
Well, and I'll just come out and say again, in my experience, I have really not seen too many cases of that. Like one partner wants to be a swinger and the other partner doesn't. and wants to be asexual. I mean, usually those kind of people don't end up together. Again, I'm just going to come out and say there's two different things that I think cause this sexual dysfunction, and that is preference and libido levels. So those two have to be taken into account. However, I'm also just going to come right out and say it. If a guy wants to take and have more sex, treat your wife better. Many, many, many times a woman does not, they just don't want to participate. Why? Because they don't feel loved. They don't feel special. They don't feel connected with, and they don't want to just like lay down and be used. So like, I'm just saying, like, we have to take and really take a look at what the other partner wants as well and how they want to be treated in that relationship. I will just come out and say, when April and I are talking, when we're able to communicate, we're able to like engage and complete projects together and so forth. I will tell you for fact, the nicer I speak to her, the more lovingly I touch her, the more lovingly I communicate with her and so forth, like the better our sex life is. Like, that's just the truth. So I think that it really, good sex starts a long way before you ever hit the bedroom.
Well, absolutely, man. Sex is not what happens in the bed. Sex is the whole sexuality. I don't want to use it. It's a mind f, man. It's not jumping in the bed. Sure. It's not acrobatics in the bedroom. It's mind f. But my point here is, you said something interesting that, if you give your partner what they need, they'll serve you better. I believe sex is never about yourself. That's my solemn belief and philosophy. Sex is about the other person. If it's just about getting your release, for God's sake, Vaseline, man.
Right.
A mirror. You don't need a second person if you just want to release. It's safe, no disease, no thank yous, no comeback, nothing. It takes X number of minutes and you're done.
Yeah, and none of that horrible cuddling afterwards.
The moment you talk about sex, you're talking about involving a second person. At that moment, this whole relationship, the whole interaction becomes about the other person. It's no longer about you. It's not about your release. If you just wanted release, what the hell are you doing with another person? There are many other ways. You get all kinds of toys, man. Why? So the thing is, okay, interesting, sex dolls, this whole robotic sex doll business, even these sex dolls, not the silicone blow-ups, but these sex, now they're coming with emotion, with conversation.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
With reaction and feeling. Why?
Yeah.
Because real, true sex involves the other person's emotion.
Yep.
You cannot have sex with the other person not reacting emotionally, physically, passionately. That's not sex. That's wanking off, man.
Right.
So the moment we say sex, it's about the other person. So I have heard so many stories and cases, at least in this part of the world, where men are really brutal and careless and really harsh and uncaring about women. I'm like, why? Why would you even go to bed with a woman? Just do it yourself, man. The moment, even if it's a paid sex worker, it's about the other person. If a woman's picking up a gigolo, it's about him. If you're picking up a female sex worker, it's about her. So I agree with you completely, but I want to take it to the next level. Sex is not about you. Sex is about the other person. And the moment you throw that philosophy into a relationship, you can never have bad sex. It's impossible to have bad sex because you are working to satisfy the other. Everybody is in whatever number of people involved in this whole interaction. Everyone's trying to please the other person, not yourself. You can get released in 5 minutes. Anybody, man or woman. So the moment you start putting in for the other person, you will have beautiful relationships.
I completely agree. Yeah, I completely agree. When you and I think that's one of the beautiful things about a relationship is we end up getting served. We get our needs met. We get a partner and so forth. And it all comes from serving somebody else. So again, it's really strange. It's like my brain is like a giant toilet right now. It just flushed and massive brain fart here. I don't know. Like all everything in my head is kind of gone. So I just want to say, again, this is, when I think, guys, if you really want to take and have better sex, seriously, there's two things I want to say. Guys, if you want to have better sex and you want a more fulfilling sex life, and this is specifically to the men, you have to connect with their heart and you have to connect with their soul. When you do that, you're going to have like a lot better sex. And here's the thing is, somebody asked me one time, they're like, oh, well, you know, because I got to ask this, is like, you know, because when I was really, really overweight and morbidly obese, you know, somebody said to me, like, they were asking me, they said, well, you were unhealthy, you were this, you were that. I'm like, They said, well, how was your sex life? I'm like, my sex life? I said, let's be honest. I said, you saw the way I looked. I saw the way I looked too, and I felt way worse about myself than how bad I looked. I said, and the truth was, I wasn't looking to have sex with anybody. I mean, truthfully, at that point, I didn't even want to fuck myself. So, like, it just, like, I think that we have to remember that we, individuals, bring all kinds of hang-ups into that, and then we end up, like, transferring our hang-ups onto our partner because when our needs don't get met. So there's a lot that goes into having a really healthy, enjoyable sex life that starts way before you ever get into the bedroom. So like I think that when we take and takes a lot of the emotion out, we take the emotions that we have attached to the sex act out, I think we set ourselves up to have fun. Have fun, do something that's ridiculous together. I mean, because if you think about it, watch two people have sex. There's all kinds of weird noises and like fluids and all kinds of crazy stuff. It's not necessarily a pretty thing. So again, just like, let's back off of what it's supposed to mean. And the last thing I wanted to say is, women, ladies, it is not your obligation, is not your duty, nothing. So if that's being brought into this whole thing, that's going to create some of that incompatibility as well. And that's not incompatible, that's I don't want to.
Okay, I have a problem there. First, you said you got to connect with the heart and soul. Not necessarily. I'm saying whatever it takes. A lot of women may not be heart and soul. A lot of women may want a good spanking or a good beating or a good rape or whatever. Whatever it is that your partner wants. No, here's on a serious note. Whatever it is that your partner wants, whatever is going to give her that happiness, you do it. And whatever is going to give him that happiness, you do it. However, the last thing you said, that's a spanner in the works, man. It is no one's duty.
Correct.
It's neither the woman's duty nor the man's duty. However, a lot of people, and it's 99% of the time, it's women who use sexual interaction as a commodity. They use it as a currency to blackmail, to withhold sex, and use it as a currency. It's very, very common. You can Google it. It's very common. Many relationships. Don't do that. It is not. And if one person wants it 10 times, and if you don't want it 4 times out of those 10, and you say, no, it's all right. But out of those 10, if you're going to say it no 7 times, then you know what? Sooner or later, he's going to go somewhere else. Or she's going to, I'm using he or she not because of the gender, one partner, if you're going to always hold it back, use it as a currency or a commodity, or you just don't want it anymore with this person, I can bet money on this. It is only a matter of time. The other person's going to go find it somewhere else. So you know what? Even if you don't want it, make the bloody effort and do it. Unless, of course, it's come to the point where you guys just can't do it with each other. At that point, you hit the big red button and bail out. You eject from that relationship when you can no longer do it together. But if you feel that one person's going to keep wanting it, you're going to keep saying, oh, it's not my responsibility. It's not my duty to do this. Fine. But you know what? Good. I still need it. I'm going to go somewhere else and get it. It's like doing anything else. You know, feeding, washing, cooking. If one person says, it's not my responsibility, sooner or later, this whole relationship is going to collapse. So you got to keep doing things that, you know, whatever keeps the wheel spinning. You can't put a spanner in the wheel. If you're going to do that, then, which is fine, it's your choice. It is a person's choice to say, no, I don't want to do it. Then, of course, the choice, and there's a consequence. The consequence is your relationship is going to be one hell of a shit show.
And I do want to make sure that it's coming across clearly that people in relationships, in marriages, have consent privileges. So consent is given, consent can be taken away. what I want to say
Sure.
is when these type of when sexual incompatibility comes up, what I think is really, really important to consider is to create a plan. So for the couple to come together and to create a plan, talk about it. In fact, this is one of the notes that I have before we did this. Is one is try to take and find a middle ground, and the way that we can find middle ground is by taking the pressure off the other person, right? So instead of saying, hey, hey, you want to like have sex tonight or something like that, if the other partner says no, like that's okay. Hey, you know what? Or if you could like pick up on your partner's cues. If you know that they're like had a long day, like seriously, guys, men, I'm talking to you. Your woman, if your wife or your lady is taking and working all day, taking care of kids, taking care of the house and everything else, cut her some slack. Cut her some slack. Understand she's tired.
But it can't be a permanent no. But it cannot be a no all the time.
No, I'm
you
not.
have to
I'm
work
not
it
talking
out.
a permanent no. I'm not
Yeah,
saying
right.
anything about
Yeah.
permanent anything.
Yeah.
Is like
You have
just
to be
like
you have to be empathetic to each other.
patient.
You have to
Make
be empathetic to each other.
accommodations. Absolutely.
Empathetic to
And
each other. Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
the same as like sometimes I run to the grocery store because April's too tired, and when I'm tired, she goes.
Yeah.
Like it's a
Absolutely.
partnership. So I just
Thank you.
again, be partners where this is concerned. Hey, you don't want sex tonight? That's okay. How about a hand job? I think that there's ways that we can take and go about this that take the pressure off of our partner. Again, I don't really like the word spouse. I like partner, and the reason I like
Yeah.
that is because it is an actionable term. It requires responsibility and obligation on both parties.
It is a true reflection of what a relationship is. It is a partnership. You don't, if you were two partners in a business where money was involved, you put in more effort than you put in a bloody marriage.
Yes.
I have never understood that.
Yeah.
People put more effort in making a business partnership work, but they make much less effort in making a domestic partnership work, which is retarded. Anyways, man, let's look at some questions.
Absolutely.
This is an important one. What about foreplay? Does that help, Rafia? I'll take it as a serious question. Yes, it does, but we need to define what foreplay is. And Dennis, if you're up to it, let's talk about it tomorrow.
Got my notepad.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
So Rafia will answer this at length and in depth tomorrow. But yes, a quick answer to your question. Without foreplay, why are you even in a relationship? Go and buy sex. You don't need to do foreplay there. You don't need to, though in my philosophy, you should do it there as well. But fine, if you're so averse to it, then please do not be in a relationship. All right, let's go up the list.
You know what? Here's the deal, Rafi. What I'd like to say about that is, what about foreplay? Does that help sex life or not? Yeah, you know what? It's a part of it, and I think that changes. I think that changes. Sometimes foreplay could end up being. I mean, I think we always think about like, what part of bodies, body stuff that, and I don't know that foreplay is necessarily. I think foreplay is bigger than just touching one another or hugging or anything else. I think it's much bigger.
Stop there. Exactly my point. Leave that for tomorrow.
Okay.
That's a teaser. What is really foreplay? That's exactly what I meant. We'll take that on tomorrow. It's a long subject. All right. Khushbu, I think it's important to realize that everyone you meet romantically may not have the same sexual interest and appreciations as you. There's a difference between sexual attraction and sexual compatibility. Mm-hmm. Dennis, you want to take it on, man?
I agree.
About that.
Khushbu, I completely agree. That's correct. Here's what I'm saying. I agree with that 100%, Khushbu. What I think is really important when you focus on connecting, and when I've worked with young couples, again, like I'm just going to come out and say it. When I've worked with people that are going to get married, and I haven't done that very often, they have already, like, I don't think any of them waited until marriage to have sex with one another. I'm just being honest about my experiences. And so that was they had already had sex with each other. So what we worked on in our premarital stuff was had nothing to do with how to have sex. Look, we're humans. We'll figure that out. Be brave enough, love each other enough to fumble through it together. It's okay.
And as long as both parties are willing to make the effort and connect and communicate.
Yeah.
It'll work out. It'll work out.
Premarital relationship counseling or coaching or anything like that, for me and April, when we work with young couples, it always has to do with, let's learn how to communicate without touching. And like even one of the exercises that we do, and April and I do this with each other, especially if we're in an argument, we take chairs and we put them back to back. We take chairs, we put them back to back, and now we don't even see each other when we're having a conversation. Because guess what? Now I'm not picking up on body language. I'm not assuming what her facial expressions mean. I am having to actively listen to what it is.
And speak.
That's
actively
correct.
Listen and actively speak. No passive aggression and no silent treatment.
Well, we try. We're not there yet, but 30 years in, we still treat each other pretty shitty sometimes. But that's just being human, and accept it. I think a lot of times where sex is concerned, where relationships are concerned, is we don't want to take and accept our humanness.
Absolutely.
And when we accept our humanness, things just are better.
Okay, I don't know who this person is, guys. I repeat, please try watching this on YouTube, so we get better comments and names and stuff. Facebook does nasty stuff and place. Anyways, well, there's sex aids available. I agree. Thank you very much. I agree with you. Whatever it takes, whatever spice it takes to get the flavor in your relationship, it's all right, man. The porn industry, bad impact, whole world, marriage, couples. I don't know. And he's continued this. The step missing. Every female thinks now extreme sex. Well, it goes both ways, I think. And
I think that goes both ways. I can just tell you, and I've made this comment, to younger groups, is that and it's usually younger men, and it's to the guys I'm making this comment. I don't care how much porn you watch. I can assure you, 99.9% of the women that you can connect with are not going to want to stand there with the one leg up, totally up against a wall. It's not comfortable for any human being, period.
Yeah.
So knock it off. Like seriously, what? Dude, FQ, I'm just going to come out and say it, man. Like, whatever happened to just good old-fashioned sex? You know what I mean? Just having sex. Like, we put so much thought into this. We deconstruct it.
Novelty, man. Novelty.
All this stuff, man. Like, it's just, like, I think, again, back to the basics. Just
but there's nothing,
have some sex.
But there's nothing wrong with any of that as long as you mutually trying to figure out what works for you. Do whatever. Be acrobatic. Do whatever, man. Eat shit. Who cares? As long as it mutually works for you. Don't expect one person to do something absolutely ridiculous, what that person cannot do. So, we got to work things out together. That's the key. You got to work shit out together, man. That's the key.
Absolutely. Okay, and I just wanted to take this. I'm assuming Mr. Bean is you. What I'm going to say is that Yasir, yes to your questions. And here's the deal. And the reason I primarily deal with employee performance and organizational development. And why do we talk about these topics? Because this is the kind of stuff that people bring into their workplace. This is the kind of stuff that affects a marital performance. It affects the performance of work. These life issues, again, like FQ said this at the beginning, what this whole show is about is normalizing normal stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. I think women always get attached with their partners, but for men, no, that's unfair. Those are very generalized statements. I have a serious problem with those statements. But you know what? Yes, people get attached, and they should get attached, and men also get attached. Women make it sound like men are made of stone and they have no emotion and no heart and some brutal psychopaths.
And I'll tell you why I take exception to these comments. So I want you to hear me, Asma. One, I actually agree with what you're saying. Where I take exception to this is that I'm an emotional guy. So I am. I'm an emotional guy.
Me too.
And so I don't fall into this. I get very attached to people. I get very connected to people. And, relationships are one of those things that cause my soul a lot of pain. Like, in general, I totally agree with you, Asma. Thank you for that. That's a great comment. Yeah. I would just ask that you remember, there's some of us guys that we want to connect emotionally.
While you mentioned that, I would say each and every one of my breakups was because I was more attached than my partner. Yeah. They could just never keep up with me on the attachment level. I am obsessively attached. So, that statement, you cannot make a generalized statement. All right.
Thank you.
Sometimes there's an immediate spark, and sometimes you have to, no, Khushbu, I do not agree. If you need to work at it, that's a relationship you're trying to create. It's not a spark. A spark is never something you work at. The spark is either there or it's not there. You can work in a relationship, you can create a relationship, but you can't create a spark. You can't create magic. That happens or it doesn't happen. All right. Rafi says, is there a thing is, Rafi, we did a full show about that. You're going to have to go back on the list and find that show. We did a whole show about love at first sight. So
And
I'm
I'm
not
just
going
going
to
to
repeat.
say, go ahead. I was
No,
just
go
going to say, to me, this takes, and it's just like the comment that Kushbu made just a moment ago about the spark. And listen, I mean, I don't know. I gave my opinion when we did that show. Rafi, I appreciate you bringing that up again. Because that gives me an opportunity to reiterate my position. Love at first sight is total bullshit. It doesn't happen. And that spark, I mean, things spark all the time. I can drag a chain behind my car on the asphalt that's going to create sparks. So, I mean, but that doesn't mean it's going to ignite anything. So there has to be fuel there. So you can spark it, doesn't mean there's going to be a fire.
You should have let her go and watch that show, but now that you've said it, I'm going to have to say it too. Love can only be at first sight. You cannot fall in love with people, for 20 years. You're just getting used to them. Love can only be at first sight. It may not work. You may fall out of it, but love only happens at first sight. Hey, that's how. Okay, you know what? We're speaking from a personal experience. Personally speaking, I fall in love at first sight, and or I'll never fall in love with you. I'll get used to you. I'll find affinity for you. I'll get in a relationship with you. But my love happens only at first sight. Okay, you cannot figure out sexual compatibility if you're getting married. Go on. You still want to say something?
No, you're reading the question, and that's I had questions about the question. So go ahead.
Okay, if you're looking for a life partner, it's hard in our culture to talk or do anything before marriage. Khushbu, that is not true. Please, that's a poor reflection on our culture. You choose not to do it. I say have that conversation before you get married, because you know what? You just called it life partner. How can you jump into a life partner commitment blindly? If you can't have a conversation before you make that commitment, then already that relationship has gone to hell. It's become a useless relationship anyways. And you know what? Much rather have that conversation and let that guy or girl run away from you saying you're a psycho than to get into a marriage, life partnership, and then finding out the jerk cannot communicate. You know what? So take that risk, as I say, and if you can't have the communication, don't do it, girl.
So I don't know that I don't cultural stuff. I tell people here in the United States and in the Western part of the world, I'm going to be honest with you. I've never had this conversation with. I've never done any type of premarital anything at all with a Muslim couple. So I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's I think that there's differences for sure. So Khushbu, I appreciate you bringing up that. That cultural concern, because I do think that those things exist, and regardless of whether or not there's workarounds, if we believe it's true, I mean, it probably is.
Yeah, well, it is true. What she's saying is not wrong. She's saying it absolutely right. But I'm saying don't fall for that trap. I mean, even the first time I got married, I was 21 years old. This was back in 1989, and when I met that lady, the first thing I said, I'm going to have a private conversation with you. And that private conversation, I said, if you don't want to get married to me, say it now. It was obviously sort of an arranged marriage. I said, if you don't want to do it, say it now, and I'll take the blame, and I'll say I'll walk out. If you want to do it, you're going to have to say it to my face if you want to marry me. Because maybe your parents are telling you to marry me, and you don't want to marry me. And I had that private conversation. I insisted on the private conversation. I said, if I can't have the private conversation, this relationship will not happen. Mm-hmm. And the first question I asked, if you don't want to do it, say it. Maybe that's me.
I want to say, so Khushbu,
okay.
what I'm going to ask is, right, I'm just looking, now I'm going to go into a linguistic mode here. So, and I understand that there's, I understand that English isn't your first language and stuff like that. So I get that there's some subtleties there. I'm just going to say, but in this particular sentence, you can't figure out sexual compatibility before getting married. What I'm going to say is, yeah, you can figure it out. What I would like you to do, what I'm going to challenge you with, Khushbu, is take that and turn that into a can. Now you have to say, how can I figure this out before getting married? How can I do that? How can I figure this? So just change that can't to something else, to how, why, just change that word, Because can't, here's the deal. Can't is a version of the word no. So think about it.
Yeah.
What's one of the very first things you heard? Like literally. So when we're children, one of the very first things that we hear, no, or some version of it. No, don't, stop, don't put that in your mouth, stop doing that, right? So we have been programmed to hear no very, very early on. It's one of the very first words we hear and remember. It's one of the very first things that rolls off our tiny little tongues when we're first starting to talk. So that no, just try to change that into something. That's the true power of positivity, is putting in positive words where we usually say or tell ourselves no. And I can tell you, there's enough people in the world that tell me no. I'm not going to tell myself no. I
would even say, it's not just can't. You have to. You must. And like Dennis said, you must, and you must find a way. Rafia, yes, I agree with you. If the sex is that bad, chance of the person who's feeling sexually frustrated. Yes, agree with you. And
Yeah, I'm going to say people that look elsewhere, it has nothing to do with the partner. It has to do with themselves.
Bushra, physical intimacy is integral to any relationship. Yes, it takes work to keep the spice after decades being together. It's okay to think out. Absolutely. Thank you. Well said. And that's where our yesterday's show comes in. Kinky stuff.
Yeah, and Bushra, I appreciate that comment. However, I respectfully disagree. And the reason I disagree with that, and I think that the connection, physical intimacy, emotional intimacy can take place can take form in a lot of different ways. There are people that have physical limitations and conditions that they're not able to perform sex. And yet they have amazing relationships. So I do think it is important, and I understand that what I'm explaining is kind of outlier and exceptions. I just think that it is important, but I think we have to figure out a way to make it work within our limitations, within what we have.
That's not exceptional. See, you're saying that the core is the same. You got to find a sync. One person can't do it. The other person says, okay, we've come to a sync. That's the core of anything. Whether you have extreme sexual capability and desire, if you have none, whatever, you got to come to a sync. You have to be on the same page. Thank you, Busha, for saying this. Admit that women drive. Absolutely, I think women are way.
100% agree, Bushra. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you for bringing. Everything I would say is a pun. Thank you for bringing it up. Thank you, Busha. Perfectly
That's
said.
what she said.
Yeah, that's what she said. Hey, this is important, Dennis. What happened to back to basics, man? You burnt out?
No, it just took. It's taken a little different form, and I ended up. My business changed. Once COVID happened and stuff. Okay, so we keep talking about this stuff. My question is, what's that alarm for? Your chastity belt?
No. No. If you remember, about 2 months ago, I had a break-in attempt. So I've got these cameras which detect movement now, and I've activated the alarm at the wrong time. So the bloody thing keeps detecting insects flying in front of it, and it keeps going off. So I need to change the timing so it doesn't go off during the show.
That's what I'm talking about. A deeper level. Sometimes we have to get a little deeper, Bushra. Absolutely, 100% agree. Thank you so much. Yeah. Let's just get back to the basics. Thank you. Again, thanks, Bushra. Let's get back to the basics. And part of getting back to the basics is treating our partner the way that we want to be treated, treating our partner the way they want to be treated. It's just let's just take and chill out on all of our expectations. And, I can tell you, as a young man getting married, I brought into it, and porn wasn't available back when I got married. I mean, it was, but not like it is now. So I went into it with all kinds of expectations. The religion I grew up in taught me how I was to be treated as a man. Right? And I know I'm talking things other people understand here too. What I found is that none of that was true. None of that was true. So I went into it with this expectation, and what I found, what I found out is, in my religion, it was taught that a wife is to be submissive and in subjection to her husband, and blah blah blah. And I married somebody that believed in that, and what I quickly found out is I absolutely 100% hated being married to a submissive. Hated it. It wasn't a partnership. Everything fell back onto me at that point. So listen, I think that this is a great conversation. Thank you so much by everybody.
So Dennis,
Yeah.
the last point you made is important. You know, you just got to find a common ground and find what works for you together. You could have your fantasies and desires, which could be completely disconnected, but you could find some way of finding that mutual satisfaction, and that will be enough to be ready to talk, be ready to understand each other. Do not judge. I say this repeatedly. If somebody comes on and says, "Hey, this works for me," don't say, "Oh, you psycho, oh, you dart, oh, you slut." Don't do that. Be accepting, make that effort, find the common ground, build on it, and you'll be fine. Before I leave, you know what? I'm really getting bored with all the comments and shoot up. Guys, you got to start watching on YouTube, either my channel or Dennis's channel. You got to switch to YouTube. It's much better, and it's easier for us to do the broadcast. Dennis, closing comments. Is there a comment from you too? Dennis has it. Have help. Hey, Dennis, you have to see this, man.
And that's the whole point. That's the whole point of the Back to the Basics movement. Is just we overcomplicate life. We end up overcomplicating, overthinking, over academicing, over everything. And when we just get back to the basics and we look at things from a very basic perspective, like we simplify our lives. When we simplify our lives, it's just so much more enriched. So that's all I have for everybody today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the participation. We'll see you tomorrow.
Good night.